Hello, welcome back. This is Mr. Excalibur. My name is Arthur, and today we're looking at the Nanbokucho Raptor Katana from Hanwei. This is actually the second Raptor that I've reviewed. I have to say my experience with this one was quite a bit different, and just kind of starting off that way. As per usual, we have the opening of how this came to me, seeing how this one came to me via Cult of Athena, so looking to see how it came from them, and then also looking at a couple other people's experience with the Nanbokucho, and taking a look at this particular Raptor, what their opinions were, then of course my experiences, the stats, and some nice wrap up. So let's take a look at that right now.
This is the unpacking of the Nanbokucho Raptor Katana by CAS Hanwei or CAS Hanwei. Now, as far as the Raptor is concerned, their packaging is actually very different than a lot of CAS Hanwei Paul Chen stuff. As you guys can see, we have the lovely Vanna White turning the wheel. No, sorry, it was the nice kind of pre-printed packaging that comes with a form-fitting styrofoam filler on the inside that the sword fits very nicely into. So far, this has been the only sword line, even within CAS Iberia, even with Paul Chen's various other lines of katanas, that is packed this way. Both Raptors that I've gotten were packed this way, and so it's very different. But as you guys can see, the katana came shipped in the saya. That is not always the case, although often is. So just as kind of a point there. One of the things that I immediately noticed when I first got this thing out was how meaty and beefy the handle was. It was just, I really was taken back by how axe handle-ish the handle was. I did not remember the Shinogi Sakuri, the first one that I got, having that big of a handle. But you know what was undisputed? Blade was nice, blade was sharp. And this kind of goes to where the Raptor line really is focused, and that is low on aesthetics, high on durability. In fact, as you guys will see during the stats portion of the video, it says flat out, when describing what the sword is good for, this sword is intended for those that do not necessarily have tatami mats to cut with in their backyard. It's designed to absolutely beat up and to be able to cut through things in the backyard regardless of what they are. Now the examples that I'm going to be showing here in a little bit don't necessarily show that. It shows that it's also a good tatami mat cutter. Which kind of lends to the fact that when it comes to these heavy cutting blades, and the Raptor series certainly fits into that category, that it's a good all-around sword if you're not too concerned with the very aesthetics. Now there of course was the Raptor detail on the tsuka, the very long tsuka that came on this sword, along with the battle wrap. It made for a very comfortable handle, I'll give it that. But man, the thing was just really beefy. Now if you notice, all the packaging went away because, quite honestly, when I did this I forgot one very crucial test, and that is, let's cut some paper. And there it goes. Shave, shave, shave. These things do come razor sharp out of the box, and that is their claim to fame. And that is, everything else is kind of secondary as long as you're holding a really sturdy and very sharp right out of the box blade. And that's hard to hard to argue against, but those are just some first impressions. I've sliced together some experiences of some other people who are pretty prominent out there on the internet when it comes to these katanas. This is, of course, Adam. His use of the Nanbokucho Raptor is pretty well evident. He's using it on tatami mats. Here we go, the Katana Fanboy. He was using it, or will use it, on some other targets. But one of the things that I wanted to focus on here for a minute while we're looking at some of his footage is that both him and Adam, along with some other people I've seen on YouTube, one of the common things that they often do with this model is they often remodel it. Now, I don't know if that is testament to the opinion most people have of the aesthetics it has right out of the box, or simply because it just has a very, very nice blade and people would like to kind of spruce up the aesthetics to it. Now, one of the things that Katana Fanboy did here with his Nanbokucho Raptor was I think what he did was he polished up the blade even more. He scrubbed off a lot of the patina off of a lot of the fittings, that black patina. And also, I don't know if I know he changed the, as you guys look down, you can change, he changed the Sageo cord on the Saya. The Sageo cord that comes with it is pretty plain. So he obviously had some nice ones here, some black and white that he put on it that looks a lot better. But this is not uncommon. I found with people with this sword, and that is that people will take it, this model in particular, and they'll take it and modify it. In another video that Adam has, he has a he shows what he did with his Nanbokucho, and he changed the Ito wrap, he changed the tsuka length. I mean, he did a lot of things with it. I don't know if he changed the Saya or not. But here we see Katana Fanboy and a couple targets of his. He took a pretty heavy plastic container here and whacked it in half. Again, showing, what I wanted to do with these various clips is just show the various things that people have used to cut this thing with. And, Adam was tatami mats. This guy's cutting through heavy plastic bottles. He even takes his own turn at a tatami mat here in a little bit, and showing what it does there. And here we go with his tatami mat cutting. And whoosh, nice even cut. And he shows just how great the cut is, and that's it for that footage. Then I found yet another nice little offering by our good friend Johnwalter, who has done testing of a lot of different katanas. I urge you to take a look at his videos. They're always really good to show what they're doing. This video is showing him using the very same model, only against bamboo. Now, he doesn't always do this, and so this is, even though he does this with a lot of models, he doesn't do it with every one of them. This one, he is, confident in going ahead and showing, and these are just a couple clips showing some pretty significantly thick bamboo that he hacks through with this sword. So the model itself is obviously showing itself to be pretty sound against a variety of targets that you guys have seen in these videos from now 3 different people, showing what the sword is good against. And here he is kind of giving a one more finishing stroke to this piece of bamboo here. And so, just showing how how effective it is against these various targets. So, yeah. So this was my turn cutting with the Nanbokucho Raptor Katana by Hanwei. Just kind of showing it off here. One of the things that this video is what I was showing with it, with the various other experiences and some of the other people that I've shown cutting with it, is that this definitely fits into what's called the heavy cutter category. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with what heavy cutters are, this is a good example. In fact, the other Raptor that I had is a pretty good example of it. Heavy cutters, generally speaking, are through hardened blades. They are not differentially hardened. They are generally made of a steel that's high in carbon content. This one is 60% carbon. However, it is a 5160 blade, which means it has some other elements in it to give it a lot more endurance as well. Ronin Katana makes theirs out of 1060, and if you've seen some of the previous videos, you see how tough they are. So that 60% carbon in these blades really does seem to really do the job. These heavy cutters tend to not have a hum-on line because they're not differentially heat treated. And as a result, they are very tough, although their blades will dull, I suppose to a certain degree, a little sooner than what you would with like a 1095, where it has a much higher carbon content and usually differentially hardened. The big difference, though, is that these swords really are intended as practice weapons. As a result, the aesthetic flourishes on them aren't quite so much. In fact, some of them are minimal to the point of not really even being enjoyable. That's some people's criticism of them. I find most of them pretty nice. Now, one of the things, though, that I found with this sword was that while the blade was really nice to swing, that handle was quite a monster to hold on to. Now, I'm using gloves, and they have that nice suede battle wrapping. For those of you who don't really know what the battle wrapping is, you'll see on the pictures in the next section here where you see the wrapping is simply just wrapped around the handle. You don't have the folded X's that fit into each other, the nice little knots. Now, what you're seeing here is definitely an example of how sharp this thing is right out of the box. And that is, it really is quite sharp. You know, I'm getting a couple cuts out of these heavy plastic bottles. But you know what? It still doesn't guard against just lousy swordsmanship, and fortunately, I think if I remember right, this one is just one of those where I hit the thing and it just it goes flying, if I remember right. Yep. Whee! Away it goes. Sorry guys, I'm recording some of the narration here a little after I'd done this, so I'm just remembering. But nevertheless, it did cut through it. I just, you know, lousy edge alignment and a little bit too high, and it just really just wasn't that good of a cut. You know, it still isn't going to get you, you know, a good cut if you're not cutting very well, I suppose. But again, that's what these swords are designed to do. I mean, they're not going to take a bend in them as you're doing this. You have this nice cut through, you know, basically whatever you want. So there you go. Now, that's a pretty good cut because you see that the bottle is still standing even after I cut it. You can't argue too much with that. I mean, that was not a very much of a testament to my cutting ability. It just showed just how sharp the darn thing is. And these things really were quite sharp right out of the box. But back to what I was saying about them being heavy cutters. Heavy cutters, by their design, really are designed to be low on aesthetics but high on endurance, and really be a good practice tool without worrying about it breaking, bending, taking a set, or anything like that. And that's where these swords really have their strength. And you know, there's a good testament to it. You know, this is a empty bottle, you know, static test with it sitting there, and it, you know, it sliced the top right off of it. And so, I mean, there you go. So here we have the cardboard test. Now, if you've seen some of my earlier episodes, I've kind of had to retire the old TV boxes. These are heavy duty moving boxes that have been collapsed and then folded down. There's two of them here stacked next to one another, and you can see how far this thing went down. This thing went down about 9-10 inches into it. So, I mean, really sharp. There's no, you know, different way of saying, yeah, the blade really cuts. It does the job that you want it to do. The other handling characteristics, you know, I'll talk about a little bit later, and, you know, what I thought of it aesthetically. But, you know, if you're needing something to practice or just want something to beat up around in the backyard, these Raptors, you know, regardless of which design you get, they tend to really get the job done. I wasn't as pleased with this one from an aesthetics point of view. Again, I'm going to talk about that a little later, but that was just my own opinion. And of course, a final note here, guys, these are high carbon steel blades. Please make sure you wipe off the residue of whatever you're cutting through in those bottles, including the water. Make sure they're nice and oiled if you're storing them for a long distance, so you have a nice bright shiny sword to play with the next time and not a rusty mess.
My experience with the Nanbokucho Raptor Katana from Hanwei, I have to say, was largely negative. And as you guys heard in the unboxing footage, one of the things that I found that was a little weird was the fact that when we take a look at this, I know the camera's not going to pick this up, but looking down the blade actually does a wiggle. Now, I don't know if that was during the construction process or what the case was. That was not my experience with the Shinogi Sakuri one that I did a while back. But you know, looking down the blade, you can actually see it noticeably kind of go, and that just, whenever I see that, it just puts a bad taste in my mouth when I have these things, to know that I'm holding something that darn thing just isn't straight, and it just bugs the hell out of me. I do have to say though, one thing that they did a little bit better on this one was no saya rattle. It had actually pretty nice fitting saya. The first one that I got rattled terribly. This one they've got is a pretty nice fit. When I first got out of the box, the handle, I don't know if I just forgotten how the other one handled. The handle just seemed enormous. I mean, I've got kind of long, spidery hands. They're not big sausage fingers like some other folks. But you know, even with that, even with a glove, I feel like I couldn't even get my hands completely around this thing. Luckily, it does have this kind of suede-like material, and it is comfy. I will admit that the battle wrap on here is nice. It gives kind of a nice comfy handle to it. My issue though, besides the squiggly blade, was also that when I look at the handle itself, the handle actually curves. Now I'm sure someone out there is probably looking at this going, yeah, if the handle is that long and a katana that big, yeah, the handle's going to curve. I don't like it. So again, it comes down to some, you know, likes, dislikes. I think what all the footage and my footage do show, though, definitively, is that it is a good cutter. These things are known for being extremely durable and good cutting blades, and I will admit that it is. As you guys saw in the cutting footage, I put this on some pretty heavy plastic bottles, and even the empty one, and it sliced right through it. My problem, though, I guess, are some of the aesthetics of it, and again, I just couldn't get around the curvy blade and the curved handle. Also, it seems they use completely two different kinds of same wrap, because on this side, the nodules are really big, and on that side, they're practically white. I thought that was kind of bad. But you know what? I can't say a lot more than this. The reason why I chose it was because this one was the one that had a slightly longer handle, slightly longer tsuka, and a longer nagasa, a longer blade. And so, me being a sucker for 30-inch blades said, oh, it's a Raptor with a 30-inch blade. I'm going to love this. And I can't say quite enough how much I don't. For some reason, with as wide, as big of a handle this is, I would actually prefer it if this blade were just ever so wider, and it just looks out of proportion to me. I mean, every time I draw this thing, I'm expecting a wider blade to come out of the saya, and I'm riddled with disappointment when I see this. That's not to say, though, that the blade isn't the way it probably should be. I mean, it's a pretty stout blade already, and I would imagine that you wouldn't want it that much more heavy. Otherwise, you're going to have kind of the katana syndrome, where the blade is it's too blade heavy. It is rather well balanced. I have to say that they did a pretty good job of balancing it. You have the typical solid Hanwei build, but when you talk about one of the typical criticisms of this entire line of swords is that they have axe handles. I disagreed with it when I had my first one, the Shinogi Sakuri Raptor. On this one, I have to agree. This thing is just, it is, but then again, I'm also learning this is actually the third in a series of Hanwei katanas that I'm doing reviews of, and I have to say that the handles, like the other two, as nice or not as nice as some of them were, you still have this very flat, oblong handle. And while it does give you a very clear idea as to where the blade is, for my hands, I'm used to, I guess, much more rounded handles that you get with European swords, and this just does not quite feel as comfortable as I would like. But I'll throw that bias in there when it comes to European sword handles versus the tsukas on a Japanese sword. So that's about as much as I've got on this one. And I guess what it comes down to is there are just some aesthetics on this particular model I just didn't care for. And, you know, this is obviously a production error when you have this squiggly blade that you look down and kind of, you know, makes a curve in it that just is not very attractive. But other than that, you know, it behaved just like the other Raptor did, and that was it's a solid build, cut through what I wanted to cut through. There's plenty of other videos out there that show them, you know, cutting through tatami mats just fine. It is a 5160 blade. It's mono-tempered, which means it's going to be very tough. It's what they're known for. These things have a really tough time breaking. And if you're using this thing as a backyard cutter, you probably got a pretty good deal. And that's really where the Raptor line has its strengths. And that is you have a durable blade, you have a very sharp blade right out of the box, and you know, if what you want to do is go in the backyard and just hack stuff up, this is a model that you should definitely consider. If you want anything that is slightly more on the aesthetic side, that's where this starts to not be on that list. And that leads me to my next conclusion, that is, would I buy this one again? I wish I'd bought the Shinogi Sakuri blade again. If you guys saw that video, I sold it. And immediately when I had a buyer for it, I thought, you know what, I really don't want to let this one go. And so when I looked at wanting to do another from the Raptor series, I saw this one, the Nanbokucho, and wanted to give it a try, and I did, and just was not as satisfying of an experience. So I'm sorry about that, just because, you know, I guess you can't go home again when it comes to swords, so that's the way it goes. But if you're looking for something that has a little bit more aesthetic appeal, then this is not going to be the way to go, I wouldn't say. But for your money's worth, you know, the Raptor series are all in that sub $400 category that I like to stay in for a lot of these videos. You know, it is worth your money depending on what you want to do with it. And it comes down to that saying that I've said for a lot of videos, or at least had the thinking behind it, and that was, how much do you want to spend versus what do you want to do with it? You know, if all you really want to do with it is go in the backyard and just tear stuff up, then, you know, the Raptor line is a pretty good place to start. Is a pretty nice one to go, because you're not going to worry about the blade bending or taking a set or breaking in most cases, unless you're really trying to break it. And you know, it's got a nice comfortable handle. But aside from that, again, if you're looking for something with a little bit more aesthetic appeal, you might want to start looking someplace else. I hope this has been informative for you. Please subscribe to the channel. Please comment. I can't say this enough. Please comment on these swords. It's always really cool for me to see what other people's experiences are with this. I try to be very comprehensive in these videos by including some footage from some other people. Sometimes I'm able to get the permission, quite frankly, sometimes not, and I throw it in anyway. And I know I'm going to get a comment on the bottom for that one. But I do it to try to give a nice overall look at what people's experiences have been with this particular model. And then of course I include all my own babbling on. So again, I welcome the comments, good, bad, and hopefully more so. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.